Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I suddenly realized it's my 10th month living in Japan. As a foreigner living here, I've experienced many awkward moments and learned my lessons. Today, I'm going to share a few embarrassing things I've experienced and come up with some personal tips, especially for those who are traveling to Japan for the first time. Knowing these tips will make your trip a little bit easier. Tip number 4 is very important, but I guess seldom has anyone ever said so. Be sure to see it to the end. Embarrassing moment number 1. Are you queuing right? On my first day in Japan last year, a convenience store clerk shouted at me, "Please queue over there," because I had made a minor but significant mistake, which was seen as rude behavior. That day, I went to a convenience store to pick up some water and snacks. I noticed a customer pay and leave with no one immediately next to him. Assuming there was no queue, I approached the counter and placed my items down. Suddenly, the clerk shouted, "お客様、並んでください。お客様、並んでください." He repeatedly said this without even look at me. I was taken aback and turned around to find a line of customers queuing between the shelves with considerable distance from the counter. That's why I hadn't noticed the queue. And there were actually queuing signs on the floor like this every meter away. The queuing line is usually between the shelves. Every other customer queued there, strictly keeping the 1 meter distance. Everyone is far apart, but everyone is actually queuing. Convenience stores in China do not have markings on the floor, and people in line also stand relatively close to each other and not so far from the counter. So you lose tip number 1. Observe the stickers on the floor and queue at the right position. And here's a little bonus for you. In bonus number 1, the clerk will 100% ask you whether or not you need shopping bags. The keyword is 레지부쿠로 or fukuro. The sentence is always like this. レジ袋をご利用ですか?レジ袋はいかがですか?レジ袋は大丈夫ですか?レジ袋はどうされますか? If you catch the phrase レジ袋, just reply yes or no based on your own needs. Bonus number 2. If you've bought cigarettes or alcohol, you'll be asked to press the age confirmation button on the screen like this. Third, if you run out of cash, convenience stores usually have ATMs. You can use your bank card to withdraw. Embarrassing moment number 2. Be careful of chika. There was a time when I almost couldn't pay my bill because of chika. My friends and I went to Miyaken to see the sea otter. We arrived a bit late and were starving, so we found a local sushi restaurant near our hotel. We walked in, and it was an old restaurant run by an elderly couple. The atmosphere was really nice and very Japanese. However, they didn't have an English menu or pictures. The only thing they had was a wooden pad hanging on the wall called chika, with fish names written in katakana, which I knew nothing about. At that time, I didn't know the meaning of chika at all. And in the end, the old man suggested we order omakase as it would be easier to order. It was a bit late and there were no other restaurant nearby. This restaurant was very cozy and didn't seem too expensive, so we enjoyed the dinner, and I even chatted with the couple in my broken Japanese. And finally, it was time to pay the bill. The meal was a bit more expensive than we thought. Even though we put our money together, we were 1,000 yen short. It was awkward because there was no ATM nearby. Luckily, the owner gave us a discount. We were embarrassed but grateful. Later, I understood that chika means the current price of goods or services. The price changes often and usually isn't very low. Okay, tip number 2. Sometimes the menu might list chika, especially in fancier restaurant or for dishes with seasonal ingredients. Try not to order these chika dishes. However, if you're really curious, feel free to ask for the exact price today. After all, we are tourists, and my Japanese friends believe asking could be 恥ずかしい, so they usually avoid these dishes instead. Embarrassing moment number 3. Riding a bus requires extra attention. Avoid Tokyu trains to protect your purse. When I came to Japan last year and took the bus, I entered through the back door like everyone else and tapped my card on the reader and directly got off the bus from the back door at my stop. This was because in China, in most cases, you only need to tap your card once per trip. Both the front and back door can be used for entry and exit. However, the bus driver immediately turned on his speaker and said, "Customer, please come to the front door to pay your fare." My Japanese wasn't very good at that time. It took me a while to realize he was actually speaking to me. It was embarrassing because everyone on the bus was waiting for me to complete the payment and I was confused. From now on, I learned that okay, in Japan, you enter the bus from the back door, exit from the front door, and tap your card twice. But soon I realized it wasn't that simple. I discovered that different bus routes are operated by different companies. The rules for entry, exit, and payment methods vary. For example, on one bus, I swiped my card when I got on and again when I got off. The fare was deducted on the second swipe. On the other bus, the fare was deducted right after the first swipe when I got on, so I didn't need to swipe again when I got off. I've also been on a bus that only accepts cash and you have to have the exact change by yourself. It's complicated, isn't it? So here's tip number 3. If you're visiting Japan and aren't used to taking the bus, you might find the train or subway easier. However, some places can only be reached by bus. Therefore, plan ahead. Figure out whether you need to board the bus from the front door or the back door and when to pay. You can find the information always on the bus stop sign, or you can observe others and don't be afraid to ask. There are also things to keep in mind when taking the train, like the JR. Remember the Chinese character, Tokyo. It costs more and only speeds up long trips, not short ones. Express trains have seats like Shinkansen, not like subway seats. To ride Tokyo, you pay the regular fare and buy an express ticket. If you forget to buy it and get on, the conductor will ask you to pay. They usually only take cash. It's a little bit more expensive than buying the ticket before you get on. So avoid the express if you're not rushed or not going far. But no need to worry, even though there's a lot to take in. Japan's public transportation is handy, particularly in big cities. It might feel unfamiliar at first, but you'll soon see how easy it is. And plus, there are helpful staff at every station info desk. Many of them can speak English. Embarrass moment number 4, noticing the boundaries. You might have heard that Japanese car drivers seldom honk their horns. However, when I arrived in Japan, someone honked at me. It happened in a very quiet residential area and it startled me. Here's what happened. We were close to deciding to rent a house and wanted to double check if it had good afternoon light. The house was next to a narrow road, so I stepped back a bit to take a photo of the house. I stood on what appeared to be a vacant land on the side of the road. While I was taking pictures, a car honked and stopped on the plot where I stood. The driver, visibly angry, rolled down the window and said, "This is my house, please leave." Initially, I didn't understand, and so I asked her to repeat herself a few times. Finally, I realized that I had stepped on her property and apologized. This driver later became my neighbor, and I apologized to her again when I moved in. I made a big mistake by going on to private property. In Japan, unlike in many countries, homes often appear open and close to the streets without fences. People new to Japan or visitors from other countries might accidentally walk onto private property, thinking it's public space. There is an actually invisible line between public and private land. It's important to know this when you are traveling. Walking onto someone else's property is not just rude, it could also get you into trouble if the owner calls the police. So, how do you know if it's private property? Usually, the sidewalks on both sides of the street mark the limits. Both the street and sidewalk are public. If you look carefully, the space next to the sidewalk are often for parking and have different colored surfaces or right next to a house. For example, at my home, the area beyond the curb is private and you need permission to go there. But the area below the curb is public and everyone can use it. So, tip number 4, be aware of the boundaries, even if they are not fenced off. Due to time constraints, I will just share these 4 embarrassing moments in this video. I hope they brought you some joy. Finally, these may be detailed in various travel guides. I will pick some that I think are important to explain briefly. Okay, tip number 5. Hotels in Japan have early checkout times, some even at 10 o'clock. However, checking out at 10 o'clock means that you need to complete the checkout process by 10 o'clock. If the front desk hasn't seen you, they will call your room at 9:50. Therefore, if you're checking out that day, be sure to plan your time in advance. The Japanese will greatly appreciate your punctuality. On the other hand, the check-in time is often very late, sometimes even at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you arrive very early, you can drop off your luggage at the hotel for free and returning back at the check-in time. Or you can also keep your luggage in the lockers at the stations and come back to pick it up later. Number 6, always bring a plastic bag when you're out. It's very useful. You can put your snack wrappers in it if there's no trash can around, and you can dispose of it properly at the convenience store or back at your hotel. If it rains, your wet umbrella can go inside. If you get sick, it can be a handy sick bag. So in short, keep a plastic bag in your bag. Number 7, always have a change purse as you will gather many coins. Number 8, add the Japanese Suica or Pasmo card to Apple Pay before rent. It's handy for subway rides, convenience stores, most of the vending machines, shops, and even restaurants. You can recharge your Suica or Pasmo card online using your own bank card with real-time exchange rates. The above are some travel tips after living in Japan for almost a year. If you find it useful, please like, comment, or subscribe to my channel. If you want to know more about life in Japan, you can also leave a message to tell me. See you in the next video. Bye bye!